Hi economists, in this short video I would like to walk you through the poverty cycle or the poverty trap. So let's start as we usually do with some key concepts and definitions shown in the poverty cycle. So the poverty cycle is a complex model, like it's quite simple to draw, but it's a model that has enough complexity that you could link it really to all kinds of IB concepts: equity, economic well-being, sustainability, interdependence, and intervention. Give you a couple of definitions. So the poverty cycle or poverty trap, this arises when low incomes result in low or zero savings, permitting only low or zero investments in physical, human, and natural capital. And therefore, there's low productivity of labour and land. This gives rise to low, if any, growth in income. Sometimes growth may even be negative, and hence low incomes once again. So it's a cycle, it goes round and round. Please note that a poverty cycle may occur in a family, a community, a part of an economy, or an economy as a whole, as a total. And an important feature of the poverty cycle is that poverty is transmitted from one generation to the next generation. So a couple of other definitions. Obviously, I would expect you to know what physical, human, and natural capital are. Poverty is the inability of an individual or family to afford an adequate standard of goods and services, and this standard may be absolute or relative. So I'll go on and explain that. The poverty line is an important concept to know. It's an income level that is just enough to ensure a family with the minimum necessary food, housing, clothing, and medical needs. So it is a line at which if you're below it, you cannot afford those basic needs. Absolute poverty is the inability of an individual or a family to afford a basic standard of goods and services, where this standard is absolute and unchanging over time. So this is defined in relation to a nationally or internationally determined poverty line, that income level that you don't want to go below. And then relative poverty is the inability of an individual or family to afford an adequate standard of goods or services, where the adequate standard is relative and changes over time. This standard is defined as what is typical in a society, taken to be a particular percentage, often 50% of society's median income. And then as incomes increase and the median income rises, the standard also rises. So it's relative to that. So I've included this image from the Australia Institute, which says, the median salary is only $55,000, but earning $82,000 is in the top 25%. But nearly 3 out of 4 working Australians earn less than the average full-time salary of this. So you want to compare relative to the economy in which that individual or family resides. Okay, so we come to the poverty cycle, or also known as a poverty trap. So we can start here. There's low income, so therefore there's low savings. If your income is very low, you don't have the capacity to put away money for savings. And low savings means there's low investment as part of the cycle, because savings would fuel investment, but there's low savings, so low investment. And because there's low investment, this then cycles on to low natural capital. So you think of the environment, low human capital, think of capability and education of humans, and low physical capital, think of infrastructure. And then the cycle, low investment, leads to these low levels of capital, which then lead to low productivity of labour and land, because you don't, for example, have the human capital to be more productive with labour and land. Or natural capital might be exploited, which then makes it even more low in productivity. And the cycle continues into low growth in income, and then continues on. So it's a cycle, because unless it is broken by an intervention coming in at one of these points, then the cycle will continue from generation to generation. So, as most people in poverty can only meet their basic essential needs, there's no way of getting more capital, physical, human, or natural, into the system, which would break the cycle. So, the cycle becomes a poverty trap. And this is what happens in a lot of developing countries. To break out of this ongoing poverty cycle or poverty trap, as I said, we need to intervene, and it's usually the government that intervenes at one of these points, um, usually around the capital area, to um, break the cycle. An intervention might take the form of foreign aid. So I wanted to give you a quick example of an excellent example of foreign aid, which included funding by private donors. When I was working for a private aid organisation about 20 years ago, I worked for World Vision, and I travelled to Brazil and visited an amazing project within the favelas or the slums. And this project was a hub of services, including health, childcare, education, pharmacies, medical care, and also vocational training for young people so they could improve their human capital. And this project, it was evident just from visiting there for the day, it was changing lives. It was changing hundreds of people's lives in those surrounding favelas and slums. And these interventions, as I said, mostly focused on the human capital. So looking after children, making sure people were healthy and could access basic medical services, and building up the skill base so people could get better jobs and better pay and better savings, etc. So it was really working to break this cycle. It was so inspiring. I still remember it to this day. Interestingly enough, I don't have any photos though, as this was pre-digital age about 20 years ago, and somewhat understandably, an opportunistic thief who didn't have access to interventions such as the one I've just described deprived me of my camera when I put it down for a moment in a car park. So no photos to share, but images within my head that I can still share with you. Okay, so to finish off, here are some examples of IB exam questions. So first one, using a poverty cycle diagram, so you need to know that diagram. Explain how the net increase in foreign direct investment, FDI, in Mexico between 2010 and 2015 might lead to an improvement in economic development. So obviously you're given the tables and the data and you're going to apply them, but you would have to understand and know the diagram to answer the question. And explain, because remember in a 4-marker like that, it's 2 marks really for the diagram and 2 marks for the explanation. Explain how being trapped in a poverty cycle might be a barrier to economic growth for a country, and explain how this is a 1A and 1B. Explain how poverty might have a negative impact on sustainability. Using real-world examples, discuss the strengths and limitations of government intervention as a strategy for promoting economic development. Okay, thanks for listening.